जहाँ पाँव में पायल, हाथ में कंगन, हो माथे पे बिंदिया, पायल हाथ में कंगन, जहाँ पाँव में पायल हाथ में कंगन, जहाँ पाँव में पायल हाथ में कंगन, हो माथे पे बिंदिया. It happens only in India. It happens only in India. जहाँ पाँव में पायल हाथ में कंगन, हो माथे पे बिंदिया. It happens only in India. जहाँ जंग पे जाए सिपाही तो खुद सजनी तिलक लगाए, जहाँ जंग पे जाए सिपाही तो खुद सजनी तिलक लगाए, मुंह से तो कुछ ना बोले, चुपके चुपके नीर बहाए. जहाँ जंग पे जाए सिपाही तो खुद सजनी तिलक लगाए, मुंह से तो कुछ ना बोले, चुपके चुपके नीर बहाए, और अश्कों से अपने लिख कर भेजे प्यार की चिट्ठियां. जहाँ दिन निकले सुनकर श्लोक गुरबाणी और अजान, जहाँ दिन निकले सुनकर श्लोक गुरबाणी और अजान, जहाँ मजहब से ऊंचा है इंसान सारे एक समान. अरे आज नहीं है साच को चाहे देख ले सारी दुनिया. शबरी के खाके भेर राम ने प्रेम की कथा चलाई.
Of the Council General, I thank all of you for being here today. And the next 1 or 2 hours are focused on India and US trade relations, with a special focus on Midwest definitely. And we will be taking 2 hours as panel speakers. I request all the panel speakers, in case you're already here, to occupy the chairs in the front, on the couches here, if all of you are here. Okay, thank you. I would now like to welcome Ms. Denise E. Harwell, Co-Chair of Global Connections, Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, to open the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Namaste and good afternoon. I am Denise Harwell and I'm co-chair of the Global Connections Forum and honored to be a board member of the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce and Vice President of the Central Region for Etihad Airways. We fly daily, non-stop to Abu Dhabi and on to India. And along with our partners at Jet Airways, we have so many places for you to see and visit and explore. Thank you to all of you that are doing business with us. We do appreciate it. And I'm very happy to welcome you to this afternoon's India and the Midwest and Economic Partnership Seminar. The Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce is a member-based organization of 110 years old. Our goal is to make the Chicagoland the most business-friendly region in America by enhancing our members' success through programs in advocacy, member benefits and services, and actionable information. Our international programs focus on promoting international trade and investment, help Chicagoland businesses and chamber members take advantage of our unique position as a global city by making international connections and providing access to emerging markets and resources. We are delighted and honored to partner with the Consulate General of India to host today's seminar. We want to thank the Honorable Asaf Saeed, Consul General of India in Chicago, and your wonderful team members for all your help for today. Thank you very much. Learning about the immense potential and growth of the Indian economy and opportunities for businesses in Chicago and the Midwest. India ranks 24th among trade partners of the U.S. in terms of exports and 18th in terms of imports, with plenty of growth potential. The total trade between India and the Midwest was worth approximately $5 billion in 2014. The Midwest continues to play a central role in developing and implementing a U.S. energy policy, utilizing its abundant and natural resources to provide low-cost energy to consumers and businesses. The Midwest is home to specialized concentrations in two of the four major bioscience subsectors: architectural feedstock and chemicals and medical devices. States in this region have collected countless honors. India has a thriving business sector with dynamic SMEs and large companies that are increasingly expanding overseas, educational institutions that are among the world's best, and competent financial organizations. We are confident the economic developments in India will create new opportunities for U.S. companies to expand globally. I wish this event great success. Shukran.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts. We have our first speaker here. Please welcome Dr. Chiranjeev Kathuria, President and Chairman, New Generation Power. He brings to us what the new government in India offers and how can we take advantage of whatever new policies the new government has. Dr. Chiranjeev Kathuria, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause.
So, I'm honored to be here and definitely like to thank the Chicago Chamber of Commerce and the Consulate General of India and their offices for hosting this event. I think it's a really good way to get to know India and the opportunities that are available there. And looking at the turnout, it's very well attended and there seems to be a lot of excitement. So, I thought the best way to tell you about our experiences of working in India and businesses is to take you back when I first started going to India. I was born in India. I came here when I was 8 months old. So most people like to refer to us as coconuts, brown on the outside and white on the inside. So I say, "Samir ko Hindi, Punjabi sab samajh aata, but bolna mushkil hai." That means I can understand Hindi and Punjabi, but I speak it, very brokenly. So after, as if you came from Indian parents, they usually want you to become a doctor or an engineer. So I told my mom that's a long time to be in school. So I ended up becoming a physician. And then, after business school at Stanford, how I got involved in India, I met this girl who I was madly in love with, and she wouldn't give me the time of day. This was the early 1990s. Her family owned a telephone company in the Philippines. So after getting my MBA at Stanford, she goes, "Do you want to go to India and look at starting a cellular phone company?" And the only thing that was going through my mind, I left India when I was 8 months old. I could care less about India and even less about the cellular phone industry. But if she goes there, she might fall in love with me because I'll be there 24 hours a day with her. So at that time, it was the early 1990s. India was facing a foreign currency crisis. They barely had any foreign currency reserves. Manmohan Singh was the finance minister, and there was even talk about selling of embassies to raise cash. So when I went there, it was a different India. You look at India today, 20 years later, it's one of the stronger economies. So when I went to India in the early 1990s, we met an entrepreneur. His name was Sunil Mittal. And I joined his board of directors. And I watched him create one of the largest cellular telephone companies in the world, Airtel. And at the same time, I needed a job, and there was a headhunter, and he said, well, you look Indian, you have an MBA from Stanford, we need someone to set up Morgan Stanley in India. And you can imagine now everyone craves to go to India to be involved in banking, but everyone viewed it back then as a bad career move. So I went in 1994 to help set up Morgan Stanley India. And I remember after that, the craze that went on. If you had an Indian IPO, I would call up the sales desk in India and say, there's an Indian IPO. They wouldn't ask what the company was or what it does. They said, if it's an Indian stock, we wanted to buy it. You know, and I also saw the social transformation of India. I remember there were ads for running shoes that said, promises to last longer than your girlfriend. So you can imagine the cultural differences that was happening in India. You know, when I went to New York to hear Prime Minister Modi, you can see the difference and the excitement that he made. Two things came to mind of what he said. He said they used to think of India as a land of snake charmers. He goes, now we can take a mouse and charm the world. And he also said, he was very succinctly, he goes, if everyone a non-resident Indian living in India would just tell 5 of their friends to go visit India once in our lifetime, the economy would grow significantly. So, you know, doing business in India, you know, what we've learned. I think one thing we realized, you need a strong, reputable Indian partner. Even though, you know, my heritage is Indian, and I spent, you know, 5 years in India working on different things, you still really need a strong Indian partner. Everyone thinks I'd like to own 100% of the venture, but owning 50% or 60% with an Indian venture, we found out has been a lot more successful. As they say, 100% to zero is still zero. So, you know, maybe I thought what I would do is kind of take you through some case studies of projects that we're involved in India. And one thing I'd like to tell people in India, things take time. It doesn't happen right away. When you go there, they say, ho jaiga, it will happen. I still remember going there with one of our executives, and we were in Connaught Place, and this taxi driver was eating his tiffin, enjoying his lunch, and he was American, and he got into the taxi driver and says, take me to, you know, the Taj Hotel. And he says, Terke, in a little while. And the executive was so shocked, he walked around to the back of the taxi, wrote his license plate number, and showed it to the taxi driver and said, blacklist. And he didn't understand that people in India, things take their time, and you have to evolve to the culture. So we're involved in 2 hydro projects, 1 solar project, and a waste energy project. And I could tell you, when we got our first solar power purchase agreement in Andhra Pradesh, it was one of the lowest tariffs in the world. And today, India had further competition for solar PPAs, and almost every major company participated in those things. When President Obama went to India, he talked about Prime Minister Modi's vision of having 100,000 megawatts of solar. That's a lot of solar. And US solar stocks rose because President Obama promised to assist US companies. But one thing, India has the opportunity to leapfrog technology. And I remember sitting with the Indian ambassador in New York, and he goes, what Prime Minister Modi would like to see is a clean India. A lot of countries in the emerging markets, it's so polluted, but India has a chance to start out differently by harnessing solar, wind, and hydro and really building reserves. So the market for solar is extremely attractive. I could tell you one of our solar power purchase agreements for 85 megawatts would probably cost us $200 to $300 million to install. We have equipment vendors and banks willing to finance 100% of it because they know the counterparty is one of the states in the Indian government. The other thing is waste to energy. There is a lot to do there. If anyone goes to India, there's definitely a lot of waste. But what we found out, the government will pay you for removing the waste, and then they'll sign a 20-year power purchase agreement with you to actually sell the energy. So we've been in the energy sector in India, and it's really helped our company grow globally. And I know when we talk to our bankers, they're very excited about India. So whether it's energy, infrastructure, or selling your products in India, it's a huge opportunity to get into. Now to talk a little bit maybe more about the specifics. Here, if you put your money in the bank, what interest do you get? Do people have any idea?
1.25%.
Yeah, 1.25% to 2%. Do you know what it's in India if you put your money in the bank?
13% to 10.
Yeah. So it's definitely high. I know we have people here from State Bank of India. They could probably tell you, or put your money with them. But the but the question is, the interest rates are a lot higher in India. And if you do a project in India, you need to make more than if you were going to put your money in the bank. So let's say the interest rates are 6% or 13%. If you do a project in India, you want to get returns of 14%, 15, or 16%, which is unheard of in the US. So what we've done is, our counterparties are the Indian government or states. We get fixed rates of return of 15 to 20%. So there's a lot of opportunity in India. But I think there's one thing where you need good lawyers, accountants, you need to also protect yourself, is because the currency changes. As we saw, there was a lot of currency depreciation in India. So one thing when you invest in India, what we've learned, through the good and bad, is to have hedges. You can borrow in foreign currency and basically get hedges, and you can make really high rates of return. There's a US financial company who I've known for a while that does equipment leasing for basic commodities, and we asked him to look at our hydro project in India. He's never done energy and never alone India, but he goes, we're never going to get these kind of safe returns that we can get in India. So there's a lot of opportunities in India. The other thing is more from a structuring point of view. What we've done is when we have our joint venture partners, we've always said, you always want to treat people fairly and share in the returns. We've always adjusted our agreements to have what we call a preferred equity or 18% rate of return. So after the money we put in, or the financial institutions that invest with us, we get an 18% rate of return, and then we share it with our partners. So if our partners tell us this project is going to produce 20% or 30%, or numbers that you hear all over, that's some of the safest ways to structure these projects. So, I want to give a lot of time to some of the other speakers. So, kind of wanted to end with two things. One, in India, you should never give up, and you need to have a lot of patience, because if you do, you're going to do extremely well. Thomas Edison said, there was a famous quote, he goes, some people didn't know how close to success they were when they quit. So now is the time to go into India. The last quote I wanted to end with, and I think that's very relevant today. Everyone knows Alexander the Great. Do you know what country stopped his crusade? It was India. And when someone asked him, what was his secret, or how did he conquer the world, his reply was, by not delaying. So if you take a look, I think there's a certain urgency in India. With the economic policies, with the election of the new government, I saw the euphoria 20 years ago, and the euphoria is back. People did very well who invested in India early on. So if there was one message I would leave with you, is remember what Alexander the Great said, by not delaying. I think there's a sense of urgency where not only can you do very well in India, you can also help improve the lives of the economy, and that's the best business. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kathuria. Before I go on to the next speaker, I would like to take you through the agenda that we have in here. There's a panel of speakers. We break in for a quick question-answer round. In case you have any questions, keep noting them down. We will surely direct them to our panel of speakers here. And in the end, also, if you, in case you have any other questions, you can write. And we will have a question-answer round. I now welcome Mr. Edward Weaver from Grant Thornton. He will join us and take through us the export and import part of India. And hopefully you have a lot of questions in there because that's the key.
Hi everyone, my name is Ed Weaver. I'm an international tax manager at Grant Thornton, and I work in the Chicago office. I'm U.S. tax managers primarily, but a lot of my U.S. clients in the past couple of years have been wanting to expand into India because of all the opportunities that India presents. So in addition to advising many of my clients on the best ways to get into the Indian market, I've also spent some time in India myself and I'm familiar with how the culture there works. So today I just want to talk about some of the updates with the new government in India, what that means for U.S. companies that are looking to expand into India, and some of the options that U.S. companies have when looking to expand. So first, just as an introduction, as I'm sure everyone's aware, there was a regime change in the government last summer, and with that, there's a lot of hope that's been going around India that there's going to be changes in a lot of different areas. And of particular concern to me is how outside businesses are going to be welcome into India and what types of tax burdens they're going to have. This is a quote from the President of India in his address to Parliament last summer, and talks about this election of hope and a turning point in the evolution of a democratic policy. And it shows about this record turnout in India and that a lot of the Indian population wants to see change, and they're hoping this new regime will bring about some significant changes. Here are another couple other quotes from the Prime Minister talking about what his goals are for tax policy in India. And some of the key quotes up in the top there in the purple boxes, that he's looking to have less government and more governance. And then this second quote to the right, this tax terrorism in the country is terrifying. One cannot run the government by thinking that everybody is a thief. And this tax terrorism term is kind of an interesting term that the Prime Minister came up with. And what he's trying to get at here is some high-profile cases that were in the news with different companies, and we're familiar with. I'm going to go through two of them, that kind of scared other U.S. companies from going into India. Or not even U.S. companies, other foreign companies. The first, the biggest case that was in the news the past couple of years is the Vodafone case. Vodafone is a UK cellular service company. They were operating in India, and they went to purchase a competitor company in India. Even though both companies were in India, the way the transaction was structured was using a Dutch parent and a Cayman Islands parent. And under the the India tax law at the time, the transaction should not have been taxable to the seller because of the way it was structured offshore. Instead, the Indian government felt like they were not getting their proper share of tax revenue, and they tried to challenge that sale, and they had a levy against Vodafone for $2 billion US. It was a case that was being fought quite a bit, and that's still being argued. It's starting to favor towards Vodafone not having to pay that high of a tax bill, but it scared some companies away from doing business and being subject to these unexpected taxes. The second case is the Nokia Microsoft case. There was a Nokia factory in India. Microsoft was looking to come in and purchase the Nokia business. the Indian government had taxes levied against the Nokia location in India. And because of that, Microsoft was scared of purchasing that Nokia business. The Indian government at the time wanted to get their tax revenue. They needed to get that revenue. And instead, what ended up happening was Microsoft decided they wanted to proceed with the transaction and not buy the Nokia factory. So even though the Indian government has an interest in collecting this tax revenue, they also need to be cognizant of companies wanting to go there and make these investments. If the taxes are too high, it's going to scare companies away. And in this case, when Microsoft did not purchase this Nokia factory, it left about 8,000 workers unemployed that were formerly working at the factory. So the Prime Minister and the new government's plan with taxes going forward, while still collecting the appropriate amount of tax revenue, is to have it be more transparent and that companies that are investing in India know what to expect in taxes. Investing into India over the past 20 to 30 years, this has changed quite a bit. 20, 30 years ago, a US company or another foreign company looking to invest in India, there was a lot of industries that they could not invest in. A lot of those restrictions were taken away over the past 20 or 30 years. And you'll see here on the far right side, there's only a couple of industries that US and other foreign companies are not able to invest in. The first column is the automatic route. Those are industries that if the US or another foreign company wants to go into India, they don't need to receive any prior approval in order to expand there. The middle column is the prior approval column. These are industries where foreign investment is allowed, but you need to receive prior approval first. And then those numbers next to it are the percentage of the company that a foreign party can own. Importing and exporting, in the beginning we heard the statistic about India and US being a pretty major trading partner for the US, and I believe the numbers were in the teens. You'll notice here that for India, the US is even a bigger part of their trade. For exports, most goods can be exported from India except for a couple of items, and India's total exports in the prior year were about 300 million. Some of their key exports are gems and jewelry, petroleum, textiles, and the key destinations are, and this is in order, the United Arab Emirates, the United States, China, Singapore, and Hong Kong. So you'll notice that India really depends on their exports to the United States. And imports, similarly, most goods can be imported. Total imports were about 490 billion per year. So you'll notice that the import number is pretty significantly higher than the export number. The key imports are petroleum, electronics, machinery, and gold. And the key sources of these imports are China, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Switzerland, and the US. So you'll notice that for exports, the US is number 2, and for imports, the US is number 5 for for India. The tax landscape in India, and this is what I was talking about earlier, that everyone wants to have some more certainty around. These are the types of taxes that a company would be subject to, either a foreign company that's expanding in India or a foreign company that purchases or forms an Indian subsidiary. Most of the taxes are pretty standard of what you'd expect to see when you're expanding into any other country. One big exception in India is the dividend distribution tax, and I have a separate slide on that later on in the presentation that I'll go through. So these are the tax rates in India. The 2 different rows there for a domestic company and a foreign company. The domestic line, if a US company were to expand into India and create its own subsidiary in India, that's going to be treated as a domestic company, even though it has a foreign parent. The foreign line is what a US company would be subject to if it were to expand into India and start doing business without forming a separate company. So you'll notice the tax rates there are progressive, just like they are in the United States. The highest rate, the effective tax rate, is 33.99% for Indian companies. And the reason why that's not an even number is there's a couple different income taxes that companies are subject to. The base rate is 30%, but then on this bottom line here, you'll see there's a surcharge, an education cess, and a secondary and higher education cess. And when you factor on those percentages on top of the base tax rate, you end up with a tax rate of 33.99%. so slightly lower than the US tax rate. This is the one tax that I said is a little different in India than it is in other countries. It's a dividend distribution tax. So this is similar to a withholding tax. If a US company has a subsidiary that they own in a foreign country, in addition to being subject to income tax in that country, when earnings are remitted in the form of a dividend, the US company in that case has to pay a withholding tax on those earnings that are being remitted. In India, it's a little bit different. And instead of the US company being subject to that tax, it's the Indian company that needs to pay that tax. So in addition to this 33.99% that's paid by the Indian company as the income's earned, so for every dollar you'll have 66 cents left. When those earnings are remitted, it's going to be subject to another layer of tax of about 17%. And that's subject to the Indian company, and that's not, you're not able to reduce that rate by tax treaty. Capital gains in India, it's different for different types of securities. It ranges from 0 to 40%, depending on the type of security and how long you've held the security for. These are some of the indirect taxes. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Just wanted to give you a flavor of the different types of indirect taxes that you'd be subject to in India. Service tax, customs duty, excise duty, a CST, VAT, and an entry tax. Pretty standard types of taxes. Rates are pretty common to what you would see in other countries. And then finally, I'm just going to go through some of the modes of investment in India. And there's a lot on these slides, and I don't have a lot of time to go through them, so I'm just going to highlight them pretty quickly. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask me afterwards. Oops. So these are the different types of options you have if you're a US company or another foreign company looking to expand into India. There's unincorporated entities, incorporated entities, and partnerships. So all the way down on the left, the unincorporated entities are a liaison office, project office, branch office. Incorporated entities can be a joint venture or a wholly owned subsidiary. And then there's two different types of partnerships, unlimited partnerships and limited liability partnerships. You'll notice I have a note here that foreign investment is recently allowed in these limited liability partnerships. Those are a recent change. So I'll go through each of these on a very high level. A liaison office is if you have a US company that's looking to just kind of test the waters in India. They want to go there, set up a little bit of a presence, and some of the key functions down there, promoting and marketing of components, identification of customers. If you're not going to be doing any sales activity, and you're just going to be there, like I said, kind of testing the waters and seeing if there is a market for your product, going around, doing demonstrations, and then identifying customers. And the key is that you'd have to tell the US parent, this customer may be interested, and the US parent could contract with these local customers. If the local office themselves are not going to be engaged in any further activity than that, a liaison office is usually a good option. And down here at the very bottom, I say that this is a good model for testing the market and for sourcing of goods from India. So if you're just starting off in India and you don't have a lot of hope that it's going to become something really big, that's a good way to start off. The second to last line there, something to remember, is there's a thin line between creating a taxable PE because of the nature of work involved. So PE is a permanent establishment. That's if a US company is going into a foreign jurisdiction and going above and beyond those basic activities, such as promoting, marketing, identifying customers. If they start off as a liaison office, and then as they start to expand, next thing you know, they start concluding contracts, making sales, then they're going to cross that line and create a PE, and then the US company is going to be subject to tax. So you have to be very careful with what types of activities that you're performing, and as long as you limit it to just those types of activities, a liaison office would not be taxed, would not be subject to Indian income tax. If you want to go above and beyond those types of activities without forming a separate entity in India, an option is a branch office. A branch office would just be the US legal entity opening up an informal, legally informal office in India. It would do business under the US company's name, but it would have separate books and records for Indian purposes, and it would be subject to Indian income tax. And this would be the US company doing business, so it'd be subject to Indian income tax at that higher income tax rate that I showed, but then it would not be subject to the dividend distribution tax. So even though the rate is about 10 percentage points higher, it's not going to be subject to that additional 17% dividend distribution tax. So in the end, it kind of evens out. But key thing here is this is the US company that's doing business. It's not a separate legal entity. And one thing we have to be careful about here is that the appropriate amount of income and expenses are being attributed to this Indian branch office. So if you have a US corporation that's making millions of dollars, in India you're only making $100,000, you want to be careful that the Indian government's not going to try to go after some of those millions that you're earning in the US, that you really isolate only the Indian portion of your earnings. The next option is a project office. This is similar to a branch office, but it's created just for a short period of time. So I've seen this happen for construction type companies, that you're going in, you're going to do some type of construction, some type of installation, it's going to take a couple months. You want to have those protections of a branch office, but you know within a couple months you're going to be gone. It's going to be taxed the same way, and you would create the short-term project office instead. The next two options, this is if you want to create a separate legal entity in India, and these two options depend on if you want to have a joint venture partner or if you want to own the entity 100% yourself. If you wanted another partner, you can create a joint venture. The slide goes through some of the pros and cons. I won't go through all those, but in general, joint ventures can be taxed at that domestic rate of about 34%. The income is going to be subject to a dividend distribution tax when it's remitted. If you want to have a wholly owned entity, same type of thing, same type of taxation as a wholly owned subsidiary, as a joint venture, except you're going to own 100% of the shares. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, if you're going into India, it's an unknown market, you might be better off having a joint venture partner just to have some expertise, local experience on the ground. And that's really a business decision that's going to drive that of what type of entity you want to create, what type of ownership you want to have. The taxation of your income is going to be the same. And then the last option is partnerships. And this LLP, limited liability partnership, this is starting to become an attractive way to make investments in India because foreign investors are now allowed to invest in these partnerships. And one of the key benefits of the partnership is that you're not subject to that dividend distribution tax. Logistically though, you have to remember you have to have two partners to form an LLP, and one of those partners needs to be a local individual from India. However, it doesn't say they have to own half of it or they have to own a certain percentage of it. So if you're making it's a very small joint venture you can make, as long as you have a local person owning a small piece of it, then you're still eligible for this type of entity. And we're seeing that these are becoming pretty popular alternatives for US companies. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edward. That was really, really informative. And I'm sure we have a lot of questions on taxations and how to do business, fulfilling all the requirements and at the same time doing business in India. It's time for now, Honorable Counsel General, to address all of us. And he's going to cover a lot of stuff that we all need to know about.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you once again to the consulate, to this India Midwest Economic Partnership Seminar. And I would like to particularly thank the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce and all the board members and efficient team which has been really working with our teams here to mount this event for you. And I have, of course, prepared a PowerPoint presentation which I will try to run it past by you, basically talking on something on the economy and something also on the developments between India and the US, particularly in the context of the recent visit of President Obama to India, and before that, of course, the visit of Indian Prime Minister to US, and also talk a little bit about what kind of momentum I see in my interactions with different economic groupings in different parts of Midwest. I cover 9 states of the Midwest, and I'm very particularly delighted that today we have delegations from almost every state in the Midwest and representing different business groupings and economic groupings. First, the good things for India is that the economic momentum which we had seen a decade ago, where we had what was known as the Indian economic miracle, where we witnessed the growth of 8.5% during this period 2004 and 5 up to 2010 and 11. And even in the crisis year, which was 2008 and 2009, India recorded a massive growth, managed to cruise along 6.7 and then followed it up with massive growth of 8.6 and ultimately 9.3. Perhaps we are seeing those days returning. And as per the IMF, India's GDP was nominally worth 2.04 trillion in 2014, and which makes India the 11th largest by market exchange rates. And by PPP, the economy was put as 7.27 trillion, which is the third largest in the world. The India's Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation has recently changed the parameters by which the economic growth was being calculated by changing the base year. And based on that, the projections for the last quarter was 7.5%, and the advanced estimates say it is 7.4%. So we're pretty upbeat about the economic development. Next one. This graph shows you in what I have just mentioned. You could see that the peak of almost 10.5% during this period, and the green one shows the new method by which we started doing this only recently, in fact, a couple of months before. So with this, the current projection for 2014-15 is 7.4, and it is going to grow. And I'll soon be sharing with you how it will, how people will start seeing India as an economic country with a high economic growth. Now, another thing which we in the government are particularly very happy about, and also economists are happy about, is that the inflation is under control. At one point of time, it had gone almost to 2 digits in some of the sectors, key sectors of economy. It had crossed the double-digit things, and now it is in a single digit, stabilized at around 5%. Core inflation is down to 3.9%. We expect the inflation in India to remain low, partly because of the economic policies and corrections which the government is doing, particularly relating to deregulation of prices for oil, and they're doing away with some of the subsidies, but also because of some international factors like the lowering of the international crude oil prices. Consequently, the RBI has also reduced the interest rates last month from 8% to 7.75%. The foreign exchange reserves of India have reached an all-time high of 330 billion as we talk in the current month of February, and $11 billion were added just in 4 weeks. So India currently has the 10th highest foreign exchange reserves in the whole world. Now, this takes care of actually 70% of the total external debt, which is actually pegged at $450 billion. If you take the external debt coverage ratio, it fell to 70% in 2014 from over 130% in 2008. Rupee is very firm. You would have heard stories of rupee getting a beating versus many international currencies, particularly dollar, but it has firmed up in the past few months, particularly since mid of 2014. And against the US dollar, it has strengthened last month by about 3%. Stock markets have boomed. Foreign investors remain very keen buyers of Indian assets, and foreign institutional investors have poured in a whopping $3.4 billion into the equity and debt markets in the last month. This again gives you some of the feel-good factors in Indian economy. If you could see that the total value of India's listed companies expected to cross 1.5 trillion as India enters top 10 club of countries by market capitalization. Over 98,000 new domestic companies and 216 foreign companies were registered in India during the last financial year. If you see this, according to Hurun Global Research List 2015, India now has the third largest number of billionaires in the world with 97 billionaires, behind, of course, China, which has 430, and US, which has 537. And India has added 27 new billionaires in the last 1 year, which is again something to talk about. Their combined wealth adds up to 266 billion. And again, another study by the Boston Consulting Group, India is poised to become the world's 7th biggest nation in terms of the private wealth, with 150% increase in total from 2 trillion in 2013 to 5 trillion in 2018. And India is ranked among the top 4 countries showing absolute gain in wealth, along with USA, China, and the UK. Now, since we had a new government in place since last May 2014, this was, again, just before I go to this slide, next slide, which I would like to mention to you is that this was very first time after India became independent, we had a government which had got absolute majority, a government which did not belong to the Congress party. So this is something phenomenal mandate which the present government had, which really puts them in a better position to bring about policy changes, bring about economic reforms, and more so because it is headed by a prime minister who was always perceived as pro-business when in his previous assignments, which was previous responsibility, which was as the chief minister of the state of Gujarat, which is again known as an investor-friendly state. Next. You see, there were a series of economic reforms which were decided. Some have come about, but some would be brought about soon. We have a little bit of an anomaly in the sense that the government doesn't have absolute control over both the houses. While they have absolute majority in the lower house, the upper house is still, they don't have full majority. They don't have majority, so they do have to depend on the other parties for the legislatures to pass. So that had slowed down a bit, but nevertheless, many key legislatures have been passed through the presidential documents. Now, expanding infrastructure is one of the important priorities of the government. Promoting manufacturing is another key area. Skills development and job creation are some among the important areas which the government is focusing. And most important thing for all of you here would be the fact that ease of doing business. My previous speaker has talked about less governance and less government and more governance and all that thing. But the slogans which are going on is that we would like to have red carpet instead of red tape. India was known for its red tapeism taking a long time. Even the single window clearance used to take a month. In fact, that was the least. But the Prime Minister actually posed a challenge to the bureaucrats saying, okay, can we bring it down to 1 week? And then it was the possibility was discussed and say, okay, can we further bring it down to a day? So that's the way the government is thinking, that what clearances which used to take a month or so are now being thought to be given in a matter of weeks or days. Then among the new initiatives was the initiative of visa on arrival for several countries, and USA is definitely one of the countries as a beneficiary country. This is particularly important for business people because sometimes you are traveling to another country, any different part of the world, and your business trip would need you to go to India suddenly, and then you don't have a visa, so you can apply online just 2 days or 3 days before, and you can get the visa on arrival. So previously this facility was intended to be only for tourists, but then it has been extended for casual business visitors. So the only constraint in this is that your stay cannot be more than a month. But in our experience shows that most business trips are for shorter duration. So this will be really very useful. Then the government is going ahead with the passing of the insurance bill, carrying out pension sector reforms, then simplification of land acquisition laws. Because this is again important, because when you are carrying out projects in India, land is owned by several private entities, and it is itself a process to acquire land to set up, let's say if an infrastructure project, laying of roads. So this is being looked into so that this process becomes simplified for foreign investors. Implementing long-awaited goods and services taxes, infrastructure, and creating infrastructure investment trusts, real estate investment trusts. These are also in the offing. And also interesting thing is that the disinvestment of PSUs is top on the agenda of the government. And this disinvestment also includes major oil majors like ONGC, OIL, and several other key profitable public sector undertakings. Not only that, the PSUs which are not making money are being put on the thing. Then the idea is also to develop more airports in a public-private mode. We currently only have 4 airports in India which run on this mode, but now the idea is to have at least 15 to 16 airports on that. Bullet trains are being mooted in different parts of India, and several, in fact, countries like Japan are interested to collaborate with India on that. 100% FDI is allowed now in railway infrastructure to improve the overall railway scenario. FDI in defense and insurance, which had been talked about quite a bit in the media, has been actually raised recently from 26% to 49%. Construction sector is also being liberalized. And another thing which I would like to mention is that the deregulation of diesel and petrol. One advantage which we had because of the low oil prices was that we were able to bring down the gas prices in India. And for those of you who do not know that, the government purchases oil and gas at a higher price, at the market prices, but sells them at a lower price, at a subsidized price to the public, which means that from the economic perspective, this is not a good, healthy scenario if you want to sustain good, high economic growth. So there had been, for a long time, economists have been demanding that a rationalization of this, so that this is being done. The diesel has already been deregularized, and the petrol is being thought of. Among the much publicized initiative is the Make in India campaign, which was launched by Prime Minister Modi in September 2014. The primary reason was that the contribution of the manufacturing sector to the economy was low compared to many other developing countries, and also it was perceived that in India generally the productivity levels are low. When you have the same set of scenario, the same set of workers, let's say in a third country, the productivity was higher. So to give a boost to the labor-intensive market manufacturing growth, the Prime Minister introduced this concept, and he has also invited foreign companies to set up factories in India and invest in the infrastructure, so that indirectly it also helps the Make in India campaign. According to McKinsey, India's manufacturing sector has the potential of 1 trillion to go 1 trillion by 2025. There's a huge potential there. And under this Make in India scheme, 25 sectors have been identified, and you can see these sectors which are listed there. Next one, please. Concept of smart cities. The current government is taking cognizance of the best practices which are being followed in different parts of the world, different countries of the world. And one such thing is to have smart cities. And the plan is to have around 100 smart cities all over India. Out of these 100 cities, 3 are being developed by with the collaboration of United States of America, which is Ajmer, Allahabad, and Visakhapatnam. Smart cities, of course, will be equipped with an array of modern state-of-art technologies, including 24-hour power supply, Internet of Things, machine-to-machine communication, excellent public transport systems, pneumatic waste management, and so on and so forth. By one estimate, the smart cities market is again projected to be very high, which is US dollars 1.5 trillion it could reach by 2020. And currently, countries like Japan, Germany, Sweden, Singapore, Israel, UK, US, Hong Kong, and the Netherlands, besides several multinational companies, have shown keen interest in building smart cities in India. Then one more initiative, which is a continuation of the initiative of the previous government, has been to set up the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor as part of the policy to connect the country with various industrial corridors, which would have an integrated approach towards development. This particular corridor, DMIC, is almost 1,500 kilometers long, and it is actually utilizing the high capacity of the Western Railway Freight Corridor. And it would have 24 manufacturing cities, located within its area. These cities will provide international and domestic investors with a diverse set of investment opportunities. In the first phase, 7 cities are being developed, 1 each in the states of Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, and 2 in Maharashtra. The initial phase of the new cities is expected to be completed by 2019. And again, as you see in the DMIC, there are various sectors of focus, but particularly manufacturing, IT, electronics, high-tech industries, automobiles, auto ancillary, heavy engineering, metals, pharmaceuticals, and so on. So again, you will see that this is one more area where business people from United States and more so from Midwest can make use of this particular opportunity which is there. Swachh Bharat Abhiyan is briefly my speaker before me also mentioned about this. Clean India mission, it is an extremely important mission which has been launched, a campaign on the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation. Basically, it aims at covering more than 4,000 towns, and it aims at cleaning streets, roads, and infrastructure. And it actually urges the citizens to participate and get involved, and not only to get involved in keeping their houses and surroundings clean, but also to ensure that they don't litter outside their homes. Indians are very good in keeping their houses clean, but when it comes to keeping the surroundings clean, they feel that it is the responsibility of the government. Whereas it's in most countries where you go, like for example, if you go to Singapore, you have to be very careful. You can't throw anything outside. If you throw it, you may be fined and you may be caned. So there are several countries where things are there. It is ingrained in the societies to keep the surroundings and then not to litter the thing. So this is what is being done, and this is being done with the involvement of the people. And this campaign aims to accomplish the vision of Clean India. By 2019, October 2nd, again the 150th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. This campaign is expected to cost $9.7 billion, and it gives various objectives on this. There is a possibility of people participating in this, companies participating in this, NGOs who want to contribute in this from any part of the world, they can get involved. We do get a lot of queries from people who would like to do this. This could mean creating toilets in schools or in areas. It also means that some of the non-resident Indians who may be here, if you would like to do something in your city or in your own village to make the village a model village, this is this concept of adopting a village or adopting a district or adopting a smaller area, so that then you become responsible and you educate the people, get them involved, contribute in any manner, so that that particular village becomes a model village. And then each village, and we have a database of such villages, they are available on online. You can choose whichever you want. So this is again something which is open to public, Indian or non-Indian, anybody who is interested in keeping the world clean. Prime Minister's People Money Scheme, which is Pradhan Mantri's Jan Dhan Yojana. This is something some of you may find it rather strange. What is this a scheme for? But if you see the first, as of 2012, only 13% of the Indians older than 15 years had bank accounts in any formal financial institutions, against an average of about 41% in developing countries. We are not talking about developed countries, which is very high. So the point was that we have large sections of the population which did not have bank accounts. They were either skeptical about going to a bank account, or banks were not interested in opening accounts of this kind of segment. We do have, of course, our country manager for State Bank of India here. It's one of the key partners and the biggest bank in India, public sector. So they know that. So the Prime Minister, what he has done is that they called all the public sector and the private sector banks and posed a challenge to them. Why not have every Indian access to banking facilities? So basically, this talks about a comprehensive financial inclusion and to provide universal access to banking facilities for every Indian. And what he said, directed the banks, is that do not insist on a minimum balance. As in many countries, when you want to open an account, there has to be a minimum balance. So not many people would have even that minimum balance to open an account. So the banks said yes, but to everybody's surprise, that the initially when these accounts were opened, we had 1.7 billion were deposited. and this were 15 million bank accounts were opened on the very first day. So which is a huge thing. I think this is again a record that in any country that on a single day so many bank accounts were opened, and the target is to have 75 million accounts per year. Ultimately, also the objective will be that the social security benefits and whatever government subsidies will be routed through the bank accounts rather than giving it in cash to people who may need it. Another important initiative of the government is Digital India. Digital India basically aims to transform India into a digitally empowered society and a knowledge economy. Focus is to make technology essential to enabling change in India. The overall cost will be in the range of 5 billion. And if you see the impacts which are listed, it will have broadband facilities extended to 250,000 villages by 2019, universal phone connectivity, and net zero imports in terms of anything digital which may be needing, Wi-Fi facilities again in 250,000 school, 400,000 public internet access points, and so on and so forth. So you would see that, and also the most important practical dimension of this will be e-governance and e-services, because India would like to be a leader in the IT and continued use of IT services in extending various services like health, education, and banking. Again, this is an area of great potential for from the business point of view, from the business perspective. Companies can take part in this and either work together with the nodal agencies which are doing that, or in some form make a proposal how best this could be contributed to your own expertise. This is a particularly unique concept of the Prime Minister. It is his brainchild. How to involve the people in governance. So this was not there before. He says, okay, every time as citizens we ask the government, what has the government done for us? So sometimes we also need to say, okay, what can we also do for the country? What can we do for bringing about changes in our place where we are born? Many times we are not aware. We have ideas, lots of ideas are there, but we don't know where to take those ideas. So many people come and say, see, I want to do this, where do I do? Okay, as the consulate, maybe I'm directing them to go to this ministry, that ministry. That's again, leading them towards this bureaucratic process, which may perhaps be a longer process, and the response may not be coming easily. So now this platform is there, created specifically for people, anybody in the world, any part of the world, Indian or non-Indian, who would like to contribute in some manner, whether it is by way of suggestions, observations, or some way, so that this thing, their ideas are translated into policies. So basically the platform presents the opportunity for citizens to do both discussion and then also practically contribute it. And if you see, specific groups have been created in this, and you could see these groups focus on social agenda, social themes, scientific themes, economic themes. In fact, basically you would definitely find some group which could be a group which you had always wanted to get involved with. So I would recommend that those of you who would like to in some way participate or advise the government, or even give your critical assessment of certain things which are existing in India, which should not, this is the platform, and this is the one you could use it. Quickly go through the investment opportunities. I will not take much time because there are industry people who are here, so I would like them to talk more about this, but it's just like you to glance through these slides, and we'll rush past these slides in order to avoid taking too much time. As you could see, I have only listed out certain sectors, but then there are many sectors where there are opportunities. The commercial section of the consulate will be more than happy to sit with you, discuss with you to give you more information about these sectors. Now, infrastructure is again another area, because the main emphasis in India is to have connectivity. Roads the whole of India is being connected through fast-track 4-lane roads. Those of you who would have gone to see Taj Mahal maybe 10 years ago and traveled by road, you would have imagined how much time you had taken, maybe 4 hours or maybe 6 hours, and then with so many potholes on the road and all. But now if you go between Delhi and Agra, you have this Taj Express corridor, which takes only flat 2 hours or 2 hours 15 minutes, four-lane express lanes on both sides. So this is the kind of roads, these are the kind of roads which India wants to put in, and these are the opportunities which exist. Dr. Katoria has, I think, built roads in Madhya Pradesh. There are several others who are keen on this. This is a great opportunity. Now, the advantage India, why we are talking about India, of course, one thing being, in Indian consulate, we do have to talk about India, but as also non-Indian, you would see certain things which what others are talking about, not us. World Bank's latest Global Economic Prospects report predicts that India's GDP growth would be 6.8% in 2006 and 7.7% in 2017. So you see that there's an upward curve, what I talked to you about in the beginning of my presentation. Similar views are expressed in the IMF's World Economic Outlook, which predicts that India's economy in 2016, the growth rate will be 6.6%, which would actually poised to overtake China's 6.3%. So while there is a little sluggishness in Chinese economy, India's economy is poised to overtake. The consumer market will grow 2.5 times by 2025. Over 400 million strong middle class provides a huge market for those companies which are trying to sell to India. The capital markets operate with much efficiency and transparency. One point I would like to highlight is the demography. The thing is that while the world is becoming old, aging, India is becoming younger. In 2020, the average age of the Indian is expected to be only 29 years old, compared with 37 in China and the US, 45 in West Europe, and 48 in Japan. And currently, we do have more than 50% of India's population is less than 25 years, and more than 65% is less than 35 years. As we talk, there are 540 million young Indians under the age of 25. So almost every third person you find in an Indian city is a youth. So this is a huge potential which the country has. At one point of time, we used to describe this huge population as a burden on the country. But now the terminology is actually shifted to what is known as demographic dividends. We see how best these young people can contribute. And some economists actually go to the extent of saying that their involvement, if their energies are put in a right direction and it synergizes with the government's views and the economic policies, they could add a whopping 2% to the GDP growth rate. Talking about the foreign investments in India, a couple of slides just to show you how the other countries in the recent times, in the past few months, what have been their interests. Japan, we had a very successful engagement with Japan over the years. Recently, Japan has committed to invest $35 billion in India in a spectrum of projects, including infrastructure, clean energy, and skills development. Japan is the fourth biggest foreign investor in India, contributing about 8% of the total FDI. And about 60% of the Japanese presence in the country is actually in the manufacturing sector. So they're a key driving force also for the Make in India campaign. They are also a major investor in the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor. Japan has also committed a loan of $2 billion for Delhi Metro. These are some of the things, but there are many things which Japan is doing with India. Many of you think India and China as adversaries, but then we feel that there is a lot of synergy which both countries can have. I already see a lot of synergy which the private sector has already found taking the strengths of both countries together. China has promised to invest $20 billion in India in the next 5 years at an annual average of $4 billion. During President Xi's visit, China and India signed 12 agreements covering industrial parks, railway, credit and leasing, with a total cumulative investment of $13 billion. 2 Chinese industrial parks are to be set up. One is going to be set up in Pune, for which an agreement has already been signed. The timeline is to complete it by 2013. We have several Chinese companies which are increasing their investments in India. Currently, the External Affairs Minister was visiting China last week to pave the way also for the possible visit of Prime Minister into China in May this year, which would again bring about Conservatively, the industry is expecting there's another $20 billion of commitment. So you would see a greater engagement with both China and Japan is in the offing. Now coming to our country of our interest here, the US. US leads the top 15 countries that are investing in India. During President Obama's visit, it was announced that $4 billion would be earmarked for the trade and promotion of trade and investments in India. The US Export-Import Bank is to commit about $1 billion in financing to support Made in America exports to India. Basically, this is an incentive for the US manufacturers to manufacture goods and then send it to India. And there is also the possibility, see, when we talk about Make in India is not a counter to make in America or Make in China or Make in anything. Basically, it supplements the thing. You could have the strengths of a US company, go and set up shops there and manufacture there. It could be a joint manufacturing thing. Similarly, for the Indian companies who want to come and set up shops in Midwest, they can make use of the facility of the US Export-Import Bank and manufacture goods here which would be actually made in US good, although it will be a joint venture, it still could be sent back to India. So these are the and then of course OPIC will be supporting lending to small and medium businesses. India is pretty strong in this sector, and then US Trade and Development Agency also aims to leverage $2 billion in investment in renewable energy, which is an area of focus for India too. I just want to have a few slides on the states, because the new government has a particular emphasis on engagement with states. The Prime Minister and the External Affairs Ministers have stressed the need for partnering with various states in India and connecting them better with the world. A new division in the Ministry of External Affairs has been created, which is called the States Division. And the primary objective is to further robust engagement with various states in India and foster closer coordination, facilitation, and better familiarization of the states. Because most of the time you have seen that many of you are actually going and working with different states in India. Like you have here in the United States, different states are competing with each other, to attract foreign investment. So this is something which are there. These are, the next one please. These are some of the key states with potential. I have not listed all, but the ones which have key potentials, but there are others which could be added in the list. The next few slides, I just want you to run at them so that you can just have a look of the various potentials existing in different states. This is Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana. Now, just talking about the two states, I'll take half a minute. I belong to Telangana. Previously, it was undivided Andhra Pradesh. There are opportunities there because they are the new states. And since they are the new states, they are looking for technology. They are looking for partnerships. There is a new capital which is being created in the state of Andhra Pradesh. And when in my recent visit, I met both the chief ministers of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. They have categorically told me that they would wholeheartedly welcome delegations. Likewise, we had the delegation from Vibrant Gujarat here. They did a Vibrant Gujarat event in January, during which 2,000 agreements, MOUs, was signed with different people. The Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh is also taking keen interest in attracting investments. Recently, they organized in New York an event called Friends of Madhya Pradesh. So you would see that these are the states which are really taking the keen interest to extend every kind of facility for potential investors and those who would like to set up shops in India. Lastly, as we just come close to my presentation, we would like to just mention about USA is the 10th largest supplier of goods and imports to India and the 18th largest goods exports market. It's the third largest source of FDI to India. The cumulative US FDI in India is estimated at 50 billion. And the Indian FDI is also, it's a two-way thing now. A lot of Indian companies are investing in US. It's put at $25 billion. A recent study of 68 companies which was done recently, that in Indian companies which are operating in US since 2008, their investments exceed $17 billion in the United States, and 1/3 of these companies are actively engaged in research, spending almost about $350 million in research. Indian aircrafts orders alone for US supports about 40,000 jobs in the defense sector. So if you quote, I'd like to quote President Obama here, when he said that the current level of the Indo-US trade is roughly about $100 billion. And he again posed a challenge to both the business communities of India and the US, saying that I feel that there is a potential to increase this fivefold to $500 billion in the next 5 to 7 years' time. The U.S.-China trade is about $560 billion. So why can't the India-U.S. trade reach that level? Next one, please. These are just the figures, which I don't want to go into detail. And the last slide for my presentation today is the gist and summary of the historic visit of President Obama. First of all, I would like to say that this was the very first visit by a US president to India as the chief guest of the Republic Day celebrations. It was again the very first time a US president visited India twice while in office. There was a very visible chemistry between the Prime Minister Modi and President Obama. Prime Minister Modi went and received President Obama at the aircraft, breaking the normal protocol, which doesn't permit the Prime Minister to go to the airport. And also, I mean, in a lighter vein, this was the very first time that a US president actually sat at a venue, open venue, for more than 2 hours, because before that he only had this record of sitting at a place for 45 minutes for security reasons. So we as Indians take pride that India did provide a very secure environment for the US president to stay comfortably and watch this gala performance for more than 2 hours. Now, if you just take the two quotes, which will actually summarize the essence of what the two people have been discussing. President Obama said, "The time has come for US to be India's best partner on a range of issues, from education, environment, infrastructure to counterterrorism." And PM Modi had said, US-India partnership would be instrumental in shaping the character of the century. And for the first time, publicly, the United States expressed support for India's claim for a permanent seat in the expanded UN Security Council. Secure hotlines were established between the Prime Minister of India and the President of the United States, which means that during any crisis, a global crisis or a bilateral issue, the two leaders could just pick up phones and talk to each other without going through the normal regular process. And then something of interest to the business community is that the strategic dialogue which we had between India and the US has now been converted into a strategic and commercial dialogue, which means that a lot of commitment is there from both sides to strengthen economic ties and promoting regional and economic cooperation. So this is what I have to say. And thank you very much again for coming here and then making this event a memorable event. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. That was a lot of information, and I believe that initiatives like MyGov, Digital India, Swachh Bharat are good opportunities for all of us sitting here. Take the word around. It is a big business opportunity. Before I move on to the next speaker, I would like to call upon Ms. Therese E. Mintle, President and CEO, Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, to address us for a quick time. We are already running short, so yeah, most welcome, Ms. Therese.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am the President and CEO of the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, and I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today for this incredibly important discussion about India and the U.S. Trade and other relations. We at the Chamber have been doing a lot of work recently on promoting exports, direct foreign investment, and other things that really increase the global profile for companies who not only are housed here in the Chicago metro region, but really in the greater Midwest, but also bringing in investment from elsewhere. So conversations like this are incredibly important to us at the Chamber and our members, and so I really want to thank everyone for being here. I certainly want to extend a congratulations to the Consul General and to our partners that we work with in the international community. It is because of those wonderful relationships, not only from historic sister cities, but also what we do day to day, that we're able to do programs like this and also offer opportunities for businesses here in the Chicago metro area. And I also want to make sure I send a shout out to our visitors from the other states who are here with us today. It's really very nice of you to join us. We really do recognize that a rising tide lifts all boats, and so being able to work with partners in the international community, the regional community, is really what drives us every day. So without further ado, I want to thank you all very much for being here and wish you luck for the next couple of hours, because I think it's going to be a great conversation.
Thank you, Therese. Picking up from where she left, yes, we have a lot of representatives from all the Midwest, and I would not take much of your time, though I'm a very friendly person with the mic. I like speaking, but I won't take much time. I'll move on to welcoming Mr. Doc Potts, International Trade Manager, Missouri Department of Economic Development. And let's hear from what we have from Missouri. Mr. Doc Potts.
Thank you very much, Gunjan. I appreciate it. I'd also like to thank the Chicagoland Area Chamber of Commerce and also the Consul General and the Consulate of India for letting me give you this really quick snapshot. It will be very quick. As I said, as Gunjan said, I'm Doug Potts. I'm the International Trade Manager from your friendly neighbor to the southwest, Missouri in the Midwest. I control and I manage the Middle East, India, and Europe. I also manage Russia and North Africa. It's quite a big piece of territory. And in our office, we have somebody like myself who handles China and Latin America. I've only been to India once. It was to Chennai many years ago. I remember the food, but the thing that stuck with me the most, it was in the middle of the summertime, and the heat took some getting used to. Very, very, very hot in Tamil Nadu. I won't take too much of your time, like I said. The state of Missouri hasn't had necessarily in the last decade or so too much interest in the Indian market, but we started to get quite a bit in the last 5 years, so much so that in 2011 we opened up the representative office in Pune, and that has been very, very successful for us so far. Just year to date, 2014 to 2015, it's produced about 6.25 million in export sales and trade alone just in that year. So over a long period of time, it's going to produce a lot more, I'm sure of it. We also have a lot more business with India in general. In the last 5 years, we've doubled our exports to the Indian economy from $80 million to $160 million. It's still not in our top 10 export markets for the state of Missouri or foreign direct investment markets, but it's starting to grow significantly. I hope that within the next 5 years it will be one of our top 10 trading partners for the state of Missouri. Most of the stuff that we export from the state, transportation equipment, chemicals, advanced manufactured goods, also a lot of aerospace. Boeing Defense is headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri, and they do a lot of sourcing from the Indian economy. The back doors of the Boeing Chinook helicopter are actually made in India. We have several Fortune 500 and 1,000 companies that are headquartered in Missouri, specifically in St. Louis. You may know some of them: Monsanto, Emerson, Boeing Defense, the former Sigma Aldrich. There are significant moves, especially probably because of the Make It in India movement, although I can't be so sure. These companies are starting to open up operations in the Indian marketplace. There's been a lot of movement of smaller to medium-sized enterprises that are also expanding in the marketplace. Specifically, one example that comes to mind is companies that are working in non-ferrous casting, advanced metallurgy. There's a lot of interest within the market, both from a trade perspective, but also from a collaborative and foreign direct investments perspective. There's a lot of collaboration going on there. Another area that's very collaborative right now is the plant, animal, and human health life sciences. Because of the educational institutions in Missouri, especially in St. Louis with Washington University, the Danforth Plant and Life Science Center, Monsanto's location there, Kansas City and its centrality in the animal health corridor. There's a lot of collaboration going on there, a lot of new young companies that are starting. Many of them are being started by Indian students or people that are entering into joint venture operations in and around the region. Some of the things that we have planned for 2015 and 2016, we plan to, I think it's, Vibrant Gujarat Summit. We're definitely going to be at Aero India in both 2015 and 2016. CPHI India and IFEX are also targets for us. And I'm sincerely hoping that in 2016 we can figure out a way to get our governor to go to India, governor-led trade mission. That would be wonderful. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Potts. I am sure that Missouri has more business than what we are currently doing, and we have high hopes on Monsanto and Emerson, definitely. And additionally, I'm just referring to one of his emails which said that small and medium enterprises is something that he has an expertise in. So if anybody wants any details on those, do get in touch. Our next speaker would be Mr. Raju Chintala, and he is here to talk about the Indianapolis, Hyderabad sister cities. And that's another initiative, that's another kind of work that we can do. Mr. Raju Chintala, please welcome.
Good afternoon. I just came back from India last night. We had a small trip, so I still have jet lag. Thank you, Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, and also Consulate General of India, Chicago, and especially Consul General Dr. Awsat Saeed for putting this together. This is a very important topic. As I was there for 10 days, most of them were very much interested in investments. So I am the president of Sister City Committee in Indianapolis and Hyderabad. So how does sister cities play a key role in economic collaborations or business partnerships? The sister cities concept in the 50s or 60s, the world was reviving from chaos and the destruction brought about by the Second World War. During this time, there was a need for peace, reconciliation among people across borders. So cities were partnered with foreign cities in the effort to rebuild diplomacy and reconciliation among citizens through educational and cultural exchanges. This is how the concept of sister cities came to be. That's what everybody thinks, it's just the exchange programs between the cultural or events or educational program. But in the modern era, however, sister cities extend beyond tradition and venture into strategic trade and economic ties. This is due to the present economic climate, nurturing and growing need for cities to expand economically and mutually benefiting sister city partnerships. Indianapolis and Hyderabad are the two stalwart cities known globally for their individual strengths, came into such partnership on April 23, 2010. The Indianapolis-Hyderabad Sister City Committee was created to govern the cultural, educational, and economic exchanges. Globalization has opened up new markets, and it's up to us to utilize the growth opportunity and each other's strengths by providing physical space, constant interaction, and adequate economic facilitation. The sister city partnerships can be used to strategize a plan that would benefit the economic development of both cities. Last 4 years, since 2010, we had ensured sufficient interaction between the sister cities, bringing together several delegations, resulting in successful growth across various sectors. There are sectors specifically concentrated, which are common between the two cities, are informational technology and also biosciences or life sciences and agriculture. As you know, Indiana is also very well known for agriculture. When a mayor leads a delegation to any city, they take some other business leaders with them. So it is very easy for them to interact with elected officials, other business leaders, chamber of commerces. Our itinerary, most of the time our itinerary is very busy, starts from breakfast meetings around 7:30 and then ends up with a dinner. You know, dinner time in India is 11:30. So it's all day program we put together. And they not only learn about the culture, educational opportunities, not only meeting the universities and elected officials, but most important is one-on-one with the business CEOs, the other business partners. they are interested to explore and make an opportunity for them to expand the business in another city. We had mayoral delegations. We had Indiana Economic Development of Corporation had a delegation. IU had a delegation, but they also first university to open a gateway office in New Delhi to recruit the students from India to IU Bloomington. Purdue University actually last year, where Dr. Ausad Saeed was also invited to speak to them before the President Mitch Daniels went to India. Actually, is also former governor of Indiana to lead a delegation to India to establish certain relationships with the universities. We also had Develop Indy local Chamber of Commerce had a delegations. They also had several businesses. So between these delegations, between these trips, we also hosted several coming delegations to Indianapolis like CII, NASCOM, and also Electronics and Computer Software Export Promotion Council from New Delhi. This helped them, some IT companies, some of the research companies, to establish the network and grow or open office in Hyderabad or Mumbai and New Delhi. Also, we had several businesses came to Indianapolis to expand their business and open their offices. Such delegations interacting diversely, covering many important sectors, helps create a positive economic impact on both sister cities and on the country as a whole. This is the importance of a sisters partnership. This is how crucial it is to both Indianapolis and Hyderabad. As we now understand, for an economic standpoint, business would not have the opportunity to expand their business if the sister city partnership did not exist. Recently, when I went to New Delhi, and as Dr. Ausad Saeed said, it's a Telangana is the 29th state in India, and Andhra Pradesh was bifurcated. So Telangana has to even create their new logo. So they are in the market right now, creating new logo, expanding their policies. So recently in my visit, I met the Minister for Industries, which is the business actually. He's the so he gave me these folders to, I told him that I'm coming to Chicago to speak here. So he gave me some folders about their policies, how much it is changed. As Dr. Saeed said, instead of taking 2 weeks or 3 weeks or months before, now it's a 1 day. 1 day. And same thing, when some of my delegates just recently accompanied with me, they did not apply visa here or through the normal channel. They applied online through arrival on visa, tourist visa on arrival, and they did get it within 24 hours. That was amazing. They didn't have to send the passport. They don't have to call me. I don't have to call the consulate office to issue them on emergency. It was awesome experience, and they did get it within 24 hours in the email, their visa, and they stamped at the New Delhi when we entered there. Things have changed. People are opening, putting the red carpet as instead of red tape. They're all open, and the sister cities. If you reach me, I have good connections, where to connect you. I will be able to connect you. That's the partnership we want to establish, and it's a win-win situation for all of us. Even though I'm from Indianapolis, but I'm happy to help you take some businesses to Telangana, Hyderabad, on behalf of Sister City. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chintala. That was really enterprising. All the way from Milwaukee, we have Miss Mel Broomberg, and what she speaks, I leave it to her. You see what she speaks. It's really good.
Gunjan, the Honorable Consulate General, and we have a clicker? Staff of the consulate too. Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, that's been talked about here today a lot. It made big headlines and provided a myriad of broom-holding photo opportunities during the past 6 months for the Modi government. Prime Minister Modi has elevated cleanliness and sanitation throughout India, connecting it to Father of the Nation Mahatma Gandhi's vision that sanitation was more important than independence. Under the Modi government, economic prosperity and a clean India are paired together with the potential for this campaign to contribute to GDP growth, reduction in healthcare costs, and become a source of gainful employment. Modi himself has stated that world-class levels of hygiene and cleanliness are required for the thriving of India's top 50 tourist destinations. Swachh Bharat focuses on both solid and human waste removal, including the removal of human excrement from public places like schools, roads, railway tracks, platforms, municipal buildings and statues, parks and recreation areas. It is intrinsically aligned with stopping India's practices of open defecation everywhere. Doing Swachh Bharat is equated to seva, or selfless service, not allowing anyone to clean up after oneself. Such was not the cultural practice or tradition for years, because night scavengers, or those known as Dalits, untouchables, were used to remove the waste of others throughout India as a viable profession. The Swachh Bharat Abhiyan initiative, tied to a modernized India, is slated to end in 2019, or on the 150th anniversary of Gandhi's birth. Indeed, Mr. Modi wants a clean and green India, where overseas private investors and tourists will feel attracted to and comfortable with their operating environment. Mr. Modi, as of January 2015, has enlisted the support of the country of Japan, which we've heard about today too, and Japanese nationals from within India, especially from the cities of Bangalore, Chennai, and Haldia, where the largest population of Japanese expatriates live. Using the Japanese 5S principles that explain how to clean up after oneself, India has adopted these to Swachh Bharat. These include SERI, the sorting out and segregation of unwanted waste and items; Saitan, the systematic arrangement of things; Saiso, spick and span; sweep, sanitize, shine; Siketsu, standardization of things for efficiencies; and Shisuku, sustainability, including the do without being told and monitor and audit capacity building. So how exactly does an initiative for cleaning up one's country impact economic development and prosperity? According to the United Nations Joint Monitoring Report and the United Nations Millennial Development Goals for progress in the water and sanitation areas, India needs to vastly increase the numbers of toilets and wastewater treatment plants and infrastructure throughout its country. As of 2012, only 43% of individuals had access to an improved form of sanitation infrastructure, while systems to remove that waste and treat it were less prevalent. The 636 million Indians without access to improved sanitation infrastructure represents the largest global burden of open defecation in the world. And the fear is that these numbers could burgeon in the coming decades as India's population grows. According to the World Bank, India's lack of sanitation infrastructure and poor hygiene costs annually about $54 billion US dollars and represents nearly 6.5% of GDP. As India leads the world in the practice of open defecation, non-monetary losses from poor sanitation and hygiene impinge upon economic, environmental, and social progress, including labor pool losses, absence from education from school by girls, time lost searching for toilets, and the environmental fouling of raw water sources in India, many which already suffer from an abundance of multi-level pollutants. Thus, financing and implementation of sanitation infrastructure and waste disposal treatment systems are firm country priorities. In Wisconsin, where I'm from, Kohler Company, which is one of the world's 5 largest manufacturers of higher-end plumbing products, including sinks, faucets, toilets, showers, and bathtubs, has had a presence in India for the past 5 years. In 2011, Kohler partnered with Caltech around the Bill Gates Foundation's 2011-2012 Reinvent the Toilet for a University initiative. For the competition, Caltech developed a photovoltaic toilet using an accompanying solar panel, electrochemical reactor, and hydrogen fuel cell system to incinerate the toilet waste, and without use of any water, sewer, or electrical lines. Kohler's partnership with Caltech proved beneficial in the offering of plumbing fixtures and exterior design for the prototype, and in helping to create a culturally marketable and appropriate toilet for use worldwide. Caltech and Kohler's toilets were showcased at the Delhi Toilet Fair in 2012 and went on to win the Gates Challenge. Additionally, Kohler provided 2 years of field testing for the toilet between 2012 to 2014 throughout India, with sample installations in both Indian rural and urban areas, so as to procure feedback on toilet use, design, and cultural acceptance. Kohler Company's sustainability manager said, "The company felt proud to be a part of inspiring solutions and increasing awareness throughout India of sanitation issues." Other business and economic development opportunities exist at many levels with Swachh Bharat, from both technological hardware to software or behavioral perspectives. The first apparent opportunity is with construction of new latrines and facilities for both households, schools, and commercial establishments. Such infrastructural implementation can provide jobs for masons, construction workers, laborers, painters, and plumbing companies. Economic behavioral interventions also exist, as with pioneer and social reformer Dr. Bindeshwar Pathak's Sulabh organization in India. Sulabh capitalized on raising women from their occupations as night scavengers or manual excrement workers to managers and salespeople for sanitation storefronts and shared pay toilets and shower facilities within India. Sulabh demonstrated that by providing these women with foundational educational skills to bolster their sanitation management skills, they'd be able to generate higher levels of income for themselves and their families and be able to send their children to school. Thus, while doing social reform, Sulabh also helped to partially eradicate a profession no longer needed in a technological age and to create new market opportunities for sanitation-based goods and services. Secondly, as Prime Minister Modi wants to also connect clean to green with Swachh Bharat, another way to do so and still increase economic prosperity is to turn human and animal waste and food into energy. And I think Dr. Tari talked about that a little. The safe reuse of urine and composted treated feces can be recycled to fertilizers and biogas for use in both cooking and agricultural production. Through the use of anaerobic biodigesters or other biogas creating technologies, the use of waste to produce cooking fuels and fertilizers for growing food in a country where nearly 70% of the population has no access to is critical. It's critical to energy production and food. Where water sources are scarce in India, energy-sparing technologies which use no water for waste removal and treatment are being explored and created through such research and educational institutions as the India Institute of Technology and Tata Power. Let's go through these. There we go. As President Obama recently pointed out on his visit to India on Republic Day this year, to grow the economies of both the world's largest democracy and the oldest democracy, we need to reduce inequalities. One of the new U.S. trade and investment initiatives between India and the USA is to capitalize upon investment back to India from the over 3 million Indians who now live and work in the USA. Sponsored by the Calvert Foundation and USAID, the India Diaspora Investment Initiative will allow Indian Americans to generate new streams of financing for markets in India that invest in non-traditional and too often overlooked sectors. This includes the water and sanitation sector, where infrastructural shoring up and new market creation are intrinsic to economic prosperity within India. Aligning U.S.-based citizen partners and companies to this new investment initiative around the sanitation and water sectors will not only create job growth between the two countries and open new markets for capital investment and service, but also help our countries attain Sanja Prayas, Sabka Vikas, shared effort and progress for all. It should be remembered that sanitation does not stand alone within a country. It affects agriculture, roads and sewer infrastructure, energy sourcing, water resources, and social dignity and prosperity, sectors and values with which Midwest participants have had much experience. Starting with Swachh Bharat, India has found a key to unlocking prosperity and providing bilateral and multilateral relationship building opportunities for the learning and sharing of sectoral experience between India and the U.S. partners. Jai Hind.
Running short of time, but I have two more speakers here, and I invite Professor Sampath Ramesh from Kellogg School of Management, Northwestern University, to address us. Thank you.
For next speaker, and then make sure that you all ask right questions. So being a professor, that's one of the challenges I always am used to. Today I'm going to talk briefly about Make in India. This is something that everybody is talking about it, but I think more and more information is just coming out as to how this is going to shape up. But I thought it was useful if I just talked about why Make in India and what's going on right now in the minds of policymakers, and why have we shifted the entire sphere of thought process from policies in the late 90s to what is going on right now. So Prime Minister Modi's jargon of Make in India is probably different from Made in India, what used to be in the 80s and the 90s. India was an exporter of products. People would turn around clothing and stuff like that, look at Made in India, recognize India as a manufacturer. In the 90s, when the economy opened up, we had this drive to try and get investors, manufacturers into India. Now, the speaker actually mentioned that it was more not by design, it was more by pressure. It's true. I happened to be a part of the government of India at that time. I served the Ministry of Commerce, and I had this challenge of trying to promote India exactly in 1990. So people look at it and say, what's so different that we're talking about Make in India now, and what is the economic liberalization doing now, and what is so different from 1990? There's a huge difference. If you looked at the 1990 period, when we opened up the economy at that time, the design was to take away the shackles of laws, allow investors a freer economy to go and invest, promise them that their money is safe, promise them that their money can be taken back from the country. That was the agenda at that time. The agenda was fulfilled when we saw the growth, when we saw the transformation of India, and we also saw companies that were prepared to go into India and invest. So the policymakers at that time, the agenda was fulfilled when that was achieved, and we had the likes of the who's who in the business opening up shop in India. The economy grew. We were at a good, healthy 8.5%, as the Honorable Counsel General said. Everything was going on smoothly. But then in 2020, we took a different transformation because we had internal compulsions, political instability. The international global marketplace had a different look at it because of the meltdown. Therefore, we had crisis in Europe, we had crisis in the US, we had everywhere you looked at it, the market was not growing. The only market which actually survived everything else was India. The reason is the engine of growth had actually been so buoyant and robust that it was impossible to turn it back. So with all the pressures of political instability in the country, we still managed to grow. Which, if you lived there, you understand why it is so difficult even to achieve this, and what really happened was a miracle. But the new government that came in, the biggest feature that I think of, and as a professor who teaches global initiatives and as somebody who owns companies, who have invested in companies and sitting on board, I look at it totally different. I look at somebody who's come to take power, who understands the inherent issues of what is dragging India back. My previous boss at that time was Mr. Chidambaram, who happened to be the Commerce Minister in 1990. He told me one thing. He said, Sam, every time we take an agenda to move forward, we always take the right train, we get off at the wrong station. And it's a fact. So today, what thrills me most is that we're all fastened up in our seat. We can't get off this train till it makes to the right station. And that is probably the miracle that I'm going to see, or you're all going to see with this new government. So this Make in India jargon that he created was not something that he just thought about it. He felt the need was, why should somebody invest in India? What is there so different from a China, other countries that are really vying for this particular place? What is so different? So we had to create something that is going to be unique in India. So the optimal thought process of creating a Pentagon corridor around the map of India and connecting the north to the east, east to the south, south to the west, and bringing back up again, and connecting the whole states of all these countries by a network is absolutely wonderful. If you really look at the logic of doing this, these industrial corridors, you can't put money throughout India. People who don't understand the geographic spans of India, you'll really understand it's very tough to go in and overnight create infrastructure that will be world class. So what is the best thing to do? Concentrate on few areas, few logistical paths that can actually give you more revenues than anything else. It's a theory of economics. Put your money where you can get more money. So this is what they're doing. So they're actually taking out and mapping out areas where they can put infrastructure to become world class, creating cities that can become smarter, creating the manpower that can be trained and can be used well. And that's how these smart cities are going to be born. These 25 manufacturing sites are going to be born. Another smart thing that we are doing there is we're not spreading it thin. You know, if you said across the board we want to do this and that, nothing gets fulfilled. So they've identified 25 sectors that could basically change the face of India in the future. And all these sectors are all written up by the leading consultants of the world, including McKinsey's, PSW. Everybody has said that this is something as a sector where India will grow. So they're not done. They've also captured those sectors and put money in behind those sectors. The last thing which is very important they've done is they've identified the incentives that will make it click. So when we looked at incentives about 20 years back, and all countries looked at it, what should be the investment incentives? And everybody came up with various theories of tax holidays, why you should give tax holidays, how many years should you give tax holidays, and all that stuff. But in reality, it has got to be something that fits today's global thinking. Today's global thinking is, where can I go and invest on a longer period of time, and which country allows me to grow my business there and be stable so that I can survive any type of business risk around the world. And that is the reason why just across the board an incentive is not going to help. There's a lot of thought that has gone into how incentives have to be formalized in this particular policy of Make in India. There's a lot more to come, because I think this is just the beginning. So as companies in the Midwest, when you think about India, you will have to think about it in a very phased manner. Don't think about immediate success. It's going to take us probably 10 years to make this Make in India dream really come true. Companies are probably a little bit more short-sighted. We are driven with various performance characteristics that we are pushed in this global world. But then, if you look at the global stability of business, you got to think long term. And if you think long term in India, you're going to succeed. There's no other country that offers the population, the market spread, the verticals that one can succeed in, the intra-relationship of various levels of society, the middle class, the upper middle class, and so forth. So no product can be lost in this whole fulcrum of business. Every product has a market somewhere created, whether it is in the middle class, lower income group, the upper middle class, the higher income class. So there's so many people divided into the marketplace. So your product cannot get lost. It's only going to create more market. So where do you think as Midwest companies you will have success? When I looked at the roster of 500 Fortune 500 companies operating in the Midwest, and I was very surprised that 100 of them already have shop in India. They have shop in India in various forms of what Edward talked about, whether a joint venture, any forms of business. But I think this is just a small amount of business that they've started. There's a lot more to grow. So when I looked at what type of companies are active, I can think about the future of the role that Midwest companies can play in India. Could be in the transportation sector, could be in the construction sector of operation and maintenance, could be starting educational institutions, skill centers, vocational training places, insurance sectors, VC capital, and what interested me more was pharmaceutical business. I think we can help both countries. Both countries in bringing a world-class manufacturing location in India, supporting the cost of medicines that we are also struggling in this country, and work out a partnership that can build healthcare to become more accessible in both countries. So with this thought process, I want to give the chance to the next speaker and ask you if you have more questions to talk about, or if you have to reach me, please do so. And I can always share my experience. I run a company there and I sit on more boards. I can always share the true experience that I have as somebody who's lived here, operated companies in India, and as well as being able to relate to what you guys will look for. I think I can give you a very honest opinion and help you all in terms of making more your business prosper in India. Thank you.
Mr. Sean Nelipat, Chairman, India Chamber of Commerce, Minnesota, will now address us. Please have your questions ready. We move on to the question answer round just after this. Thanks.
Thank you, Gunjan. And thank you very much for this opportunity. I think it's a great program, Dr. Said and the Consul General of India, as well as Chicagoland Commerce, for hosting this. I think we have covered most of the numbers today. The Consul General had presented a significant number that covers all the industries and how we're doing in India. We really don't have to go through any of those things. But there are three key things that I would like to highlight. India, if you talk about India, we're talking about growth. If you talk about India, we're talking about sustainable development that is required. And if you talk about India, we're saying that currently, whatever stage they are, they need to start moving into a matured state. It's not the thinking about an age. Maturity is not measured by age, but it is the attitude that people have to carry. Two things which I would like to clearly point out. We all talk about how young India is. 29 years, 25 years, we talk about all that numbers. But we also forget saying that the 50%, if they are under 25 or 29, there is the remaining 50% who also need some sort of process in place. And what are we doing for that? Okay, geriatrics, many areas. We don't talk much about it. Why not? That's one thing we have to highlight. India is definitely the talk of the town globally. I mean, we have stopped talking in cities. Cities already been fed up with a lot of news, but it has moved out to the town. The town has started talking. Recent past days, I was visiting one of the German township in Minnesota, a little bit inside Minnesota. And the moment they saw me, they started talking about, oh, India is doing this, India is doing that. So it tells us that it's now reached the townships, and people are talking about it. So what has made India that? It's definitely the developments that has been talked about. Some of the highlights that we have already talked about, we have seen listed earlier, is already being captured here. But you look at Bloomberg reports. Michael Bloomberg, who's currently visiting India right now, he's talking about India is not a leader as a climate change. He's saying India is the climate leadership. They are fall into the leadership group. Why is that? There has been several countries who's talking about it. Why suddenly India? I think there is an introspection we have to do, saying that there is a leader, and it's about an individual who can actually lead. He's also telling as to how to follow. If you're not able to lead, don't worry, just follow. But if you're able to lead, take charge and move forward, is what he's saying. Similar to that, there are multiple projects that has been going on in solar projects, smart cities. These are some of the quotes that I don't want to really go through it, but if you really look at all across India, you will talk about what is Chennai doing. It's called the Detroit of India. Okay, there is a significant approach right there. Kolkata is planning a bigger capital. That is growth there. Mumbai, Delhi is biggest commercial estate. Doctor just mentioned about how the Mumbai corridor is coming up. That's a significant approach, significant project that we're talking about. Hyderabad, supposed to be known as now it's one of the best airport that was built, which means we're talking about infrastructure growth. So we're not seeing any previous kind of infrastructures. We are seeing development-based infrastructures. Talking about Mumbai, everybody knows about Mumbai mostly from a Bollywood standpoint, but very little people know that Jew aerodrome, which is supposed to be the oldest aerodrome out there, that was one of the first in India. Karnataka, the Silicon Valley of India, is also now turning up to the becoming the biotechnology clusters. It's supposed to be completed by 2013. We don't have much information about it, but they're still in scheduled state to get completed by 2016 or so. Okay, this comes to what is the investors, whenever they travel to India, what are they really doing there? And so far, what have they done? If you notice this particular picture, it tells you people have been starting funding in Bangalore, New Delhi. So those are some of those bigger ones, Bangalore, New Delhi, Mumbai, others. But still, Pune, a smaller city, is also getting attraction. GE just announced its major factory in Pune. So we are getting attraction to smaller cities as well. I wanted to go and link back to what Professor Sam had mentioned. If you look at that economic growth about India, in 2010, McKinsey Global Institute had conducted a study of India. And what they did is they actually split it up into 3 different tiers, the city with different 3 tiers. If you look up, Pune falls into the 3rd tier at that particular point in time. And now, a 3rd tier city can attract a huge investment such as GE, which means we have potential there. If anybody wants to refer, I think I would rather recommend you to go and read through that McKinsey Global Report Institute report. That will give you more information. It also shows you what sectors it's been covered, what kind of money is flowing in, and who's funding. India's economic relations, I don't have to talk too much because I think this has all been covered today through various sources, including the Consul General mentioned about it. So I'm not going to touch on this. But you have significant opportunity of growth here in India. What I would like to talk about is these 2 things, because we probably have not touched too much upon the corporate side. As a member of the chamber, I visit with CEOs, chairmen, board members, when we meet and talk, or when we go into an economic forum, some of the key things that they highlight, and the advisors always collect, and they all come back and say, what is that they need from India government? This is what they need. They need a simple law, which is easy to understand. They need transparent governance. They need streamlined CSR. That means you actually go out and help your society. And how do you do it? Be transparent about it. They need inclusion. They want you to be a business-like government versus, they call this, as one of the advisors mentioned, a Babu-like government. So they need environmental clearance pretty fast, not in terms of multiple months. You just keep on waiting, and then suddenly you get taxation. Well, your clearance is not done, but you still get taxed. You need engaged partners from local and international. Bring them on board. Ask them to engage. But more importantly, have the right people at the right place. Increasing of FDI limit has been talked about multiple times in multiple forums. But finally, one of the key things which is standing out today is that to provide an overseas investors an opportunity to get a response when they ask for a query. They don't get it, and therefore they don't know what to do with it. This is where they would like to get. Changing landscapes. If you look at the first sentence there, the positive signs, I'm looking at the 9 Midwest states which the Consul General always refers under his jurisdiction. If you really put together these 9 states, you have a significant opportunity of corporates here. 19 alone itself, the corporate Fortune 100 corporations is in Minnesota. What are we then lacking? Why are we not taking it as a group? Primarily because I see as one issue. We see and we work as one state. We don't collaborate. So we lack collaboration. This is one of the key things that we don't do much, and we really don't do well. This is a forum that I think will bring us together. Maybe we should do it more, or maybe we should individually, by state, we should collaborate more. And even if it is a delegation, plan for a delegation jointly. Last, but before I just wind up, I wanted to mention something here, which I made a note. I have always felt that we have always gone back to history and to try and understand.
we learn from history, we also celebrate it. But every point in time, we have to move forward. And from a move forward standpoint, I think we talk less about it. We talk about and we celebrate the past histories. But let's start talking move forward. What are we going to do? So in that perspective, I would like to see this Minnesota timeline. For that particular state, this is what they are planning. If we have a place or identify what each different state is planning to do and where we can synergize and collaborate, this is an opportunity how we can work together. Minnesota is definitely planning for a World's Fair in 2023, and that's one of the biggest ambitious plan there, but we have got the State Department's approval, we have got the United States President's information. They are planning to work with us. We are taking a delegation to Milan this year as a prelude to this. There's a significant opportunity for entire Midwest to start working with it. We will be reaching out to all the governors to be a part of this. So we don't see it as a Minnesota state fair or a World's Fair. We would like to call it as the Midwest World Fair. And if you are interested in learning more about this, please visit the sites. It will give you more information. If not, you can reach out to the Consul General's office or to our chamber directly and we can help you. Thank you much.
Thank you, Mr. Sean. Thank you to all the speakers, and thank you for all your patience for going through a lot of information today that we've shared. I know it's a lot of information, but it's really fruitful, and hopefully picking up from what Mr. Sean said, we have to come together and let's make Midwest the biggest contributor to Indian economy and to the US economy. With this, I open the house for questions, and yes, coffee too. For me? Okay. For me, it sounds like a test, but yeah.
Could you make these wonderful presentations available publicly, like at the website or someplace? Because several presentations, like of the Consul General and many others, even this last speaker, Sean's, were really greatly informative, and we can hardly make so many notes. So if they are available, it would be really wonderful.
These would be available, and I request all the speakers to, whosoever has not shared there, do share it with us. We have to pass it on, and we do plan to share it with others in India and with the embassy. So yeah, we would need this, yes. Any other questions on tax?
Mr. Weaver, we just wanted to know where we are with respect to the bilateral investment treaty between the US and India.
The bilateral investment treaty between US and India.
There's currently a tax treaty between the US and India. So any negotiations would just be for a tax treaty would be a revision.
Would you like to repeat yourself, or was it audible enough?
There's currently a tax treaty between India and the United States, and if there's any negotiations that are going on, it would just be a revision to the older version, but there is still a tax treaty in place right now.
Since you're the only one, I had a lot of questions for Dr. Katuria. Unfortunately, he's left. But you're left. The difference in taxation on the liaison office and a branch office of the U.S. What do you, if it's a temporary situation like you mentioned for a liaison, how is the taxation different in there?
So the difference between a liaison office and a branch office, what really drives that is what your business needs are and what you want the individuals that are in India to be doing. So if you have a company that's going to go to India and just go around and demonstrate a product, get your name out, generate leads, and all the true income earning activities are going to be done in the United States, then a liaison office would be sufficient. If you're going to take that a little step further and you want the Indian office to be concluding contracts on its own, performing work in India, selling goods in India, then you would need to take it a step further and open a branch office or an Indian subsidiary.
My question is for Professor Ramesh. You mentioned about how India was immune to business risks during the meltdown and how we must think of the long term for stability. But I always felt that there's an inherent regulatory risk aspect involved with India in terms of, say, reform risks or policy risks. So how can investing companies look past these kinds of risks for the long-term stability. We've been made aware that the present government has opened the floodgates for investors, but we are quite positively uncertain of what the future has to hold in India, right?
Okay. I think primarily you have to look at it in two ways. One, if you already have an investment in India, how do you protect that investment in such a way that you do not get into all these issues of uncertainty? The other one is, how do you invest in India on a safe mode? There are two different issues. Both are to be tackled differently. On the first issue of it, of how you would, as an existing company, protect yourself, there's so many changes of rules and regulations that's going on simultaneously. The roles of directorships have changed. There are obligations of directors that have newly been added on. So my suggestion to all of you is, keep looking at the website. The websites have really improved in India today. So that's one thing you want to really get updated. Second thing is, definitely seek a rule of a good tax consultant in India who's very familiar with the rules and regulations there. And that is because of changing regulations I'm talking about. Every country that goes through these type of transformations, there will be a transition time that you have to really look out how to stabilize your companies. Now, going back to the fundamentals of whether your company will be stable and successful and what happens to this whole thing, I can tell you in only one model. Point out a company to me that has invested in India and has not made money. I'll give you a simple example, and this is probably a very practical example. I put a company in India in Manesar, and this is about 15 years back. And I always joke about it. I tell everybody that my real estate actually shows up on the balance sheet more profitable at any point of time. Can't lose money. One of the biggest laws in India is you can acquire a real estate, even as a foreign company. No other country allows you to really buy a real estate and hold it in your name. Point number one. Point number two, your profits are 100% repatriable. Government of India has never dishonored any law with reference to a dividend repatriation. There's no record of any company not failing to repatriate their profit from India. So as companies were going in, one of the best things to do is to make sure that you set your company right. If you do not set up your company right, wherein your investment logic is sound, then you will always have transitional problems that will come back to haunt you. So good advice is, don't try to take shortcuts in setting up companies. Take a thorough investigation of what is right for your company. Where do you want to be as a company in the next 5 years, 10 years? Take a long-term view. Set the company up right. Use the right people to set up your company. And then definitely hire the right people to run your company. These are two experience-oriented advice I can give.
Thank you.
To add to what Professor Sampath said, also when we are establishing a business in India, one thing that I have always recommended is get to know the work culture and get to know the culture of India. People are different, they think differently, they write differently, they speak differently. So culture is one more thing. Yes, we have one more question at the back.
Yes, not a question but a comment. Last week there was an Illinois delegation led by the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity to the Bio India conference in Bangalore. Illinois actually was the only state in the United States present, and a lot of good information was seen at that conference, but one of the most astounding to me was, I did not know, was that in terms of biotech crops, India is the 4th in acreage, biotech crop acreage in the world. Mostly biotech cotton at this point, but other crops as well. But I was astounded to learn that the amount of biotech crops in India.
Thank you, Mr. Michael, for that. And I know an upcoming field is iBio Life Sciences. Any further questions that we have? Referring to Mr. Iftikhar Sharif, he said that he had a lot of questions. You can most welcome write to me with all your questions and we will forward it to our panelists. Not a problem.
I'm actually standing here on behalf of Teresa Mentel, who had to go and she made her remarks before. Basically, I would like to just thank all of you. It has been a wonderful 2.5 hours brainstorming sessions on what are the various possibilities in India in the field of in different businesses, the economic opportunities which India could offer, especially at this point of time. We had some excellent presentations made by speakers, Dr. Chiranjeev Katuria, Edward Weaver, then Top Watts. Then we had presentation by Raju Shintala, Mel Bromberg, Professor Sampath Ramesh and Sean. We in the consulate, we value our partnership with key partners, and in this particular event, we certainly value the enormous contribution which Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce has done to encourage businesses between the two sides. The consulate partners with several different agencies and bodies in the 9 states under our charge. Sean Nilipirant is again one such organization he represents, is the India Chamber of Commerce. Surely we would like to, we'll be doing certain things with them. Our own Chamber of Commerce, US India Chamber of Commerce. Mike had just come back, I think, from India. You had a lot of, we would like to also use your feedback, because we were planning to have a life sciences event organized here last year, but had to be postponed. In fact, it is coming up in a new avatar. In another 2 months' time, we are going to have 2 leading officials from India, the Secretary Biotech and Secretary Science and Technology, coming here for a major event. So I think we are now looking at a possibility of organizing something in the life sciences field in the month of May. We will let you know, and we would be very happy to be of any assistance to any of you. During my interaction with several governors, we get the feedback that many of the governors want to lead trade missions to India. We already have requests from 3 governors and who are planning missions in 2015 and 16. So we have exciting times ahead between the US Midwest and India, and certainly all of you must be looking keenly for exploiting these opportunities, and so are we in the consulate. And just to say that we are there for anything, any kind of assistance you need. Our commercial department will always be there. We are now issuing visas for 10-year multiple visas for business people, up to 10-year multiple visas. Make use of these facilities, and you reach out to us for any difficulty. Thank you once again for being part of this event and making it a success, and enjoy the networking, enjoy the coffee, and thank you, Gunjan, for doing an excellent job as a moderator.
Have a few takeaways for you. That is important information about the Government of India portal and various other ministries. Please catch hold of those and book that is there for you. Thank you all for coming.